Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes on hot tasty pancakes, where we deliver an excellent podcast that needs no revision. We are talking about the vision. I've had a very long day, so we're going to get through this pod, baby. Welcome to Pop-O-Holics. You've stumbled upon a main topic episode, and my golly, we are wrapping up Content Creator Month in a big way. We got a mega cast for you today, if you will, and I am your host, as always, Christian Katie, and I'm joined by two of my fellow associates.
Chris Conkling.
And Brian Dupree.
Now we're associates.
Not best friends?
Barely acquaintances.
James, please silence. I haven't introduced you yet. Thank you very much. And we have a lovely return guest that people love, especially when they wait to be introduced. And we have a new guest from the new C4S Villains podcast and the Anime Lately podcast. We have James and Vash.
What's going on, guys? So happy to be here.
Same here, likewise. I was hoping that we would be included as the best friends. You know, maybe switch the roles for this one. Maybe to switch the opportunity for that.
Get the dynamics going. Well, certainly we're in the tryout phase. James is pretty close. Vash, I just met you, so let's not get carried away.
Yeah, I know.
But I believe our friendship could grow.
I was probably jump to home base, maybe, real quick.
Home base. Not sure what you are implying by that, but I appreciate
That's
you being
all the
so
way.
far.
Home base is all the way. That is super friendly. I would say beyond best friend. Intimate.
Why have we gathered all these wonderful people together? Well, this is Content Creator Month, and what we are going to be discussing is, we've had a lot of great new guests in the past few weeks. We had Diana Goodman of the 30-20-10 podcast. We had Bryce and Bandy from The Year to Be, and we selected some of their favorite stuff. We asked James, "Hey James, Vash, what's your favorite thing?" And they're like, "Well, we're watching WandaVision right now, so let's do something around WandaVision." And we've already had you on. We've talked about a lot of stuff you love, so we landed on this. But why did we come to this conclusion to choose this particular comic series?
Yeah, I mean, we love WandaVision. Like, everything that's been going on with this show, it's shaping up to be one of the best things that the MCU has ever produced. And I'm so happy with it.
Wow.
We've We've got 2 episodes left, and I absolutely love every minute of it. And if you watch WandaVision, if you've read comics, you'll know that WandaVision is this really cool amalgamation of Tom King's division and the House of M storyline all thrown in together, with the MCU taking their own liberties as well, which is something that Kevin Feige and his team does so well. And man, reading this story, it's crazy good, and I can't wait to talk about it with you guys.
And to add to what James was just saying, it kind of gives the backstory of how with these characters a Vision is, and with the type of realism you want a family, and know and understand why Wanda wants a family and how she feels left out of not having Vision in her life no more and having the kids aspect. And reading the story really gets you in the feels and understanding what family is and what being real is, because you saw it in the physical aspect, but also in the mindset of both Vision and plus Virginia and plus Wanda herself.
Yeah, I think this is a great compliment and definitely source material for WandaVision. I won't say WandaVision is the greatest thing, but we'll have more thoughts on WandaVision next month in our what do we call it? Augmented reality month? Is that going to be
something like that?
Something like that. And
distorted reality.
And you guys are actually doing, I also wanted to plug, you're doing recaps of every episode of WandaVision that viewers can check out if they subscribe to the C4S Villains YouTube channel. You guys are doing that over on YouTube. Chris has been a guest a couple of times. It's been a real fun romp.
I have. It's been awesome getting to chat with you guys about a couple WandaVision episodes. So I've really appreciated you inviting me onto the show. It's a blast.
Yeah, man, it's a blast having you on the show, and I can't wait to have you back for the series finale of WandaVision. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and once we steal you from the show as well, and just become a regular co-host as well, stuff happens.
Bye, Pop-O-Holics.
Chris, you enjoy being on the C4S Villains Show. Enjoy your time. Sorry I couldn't make it, James. I know you asked me to be on every episode, but I have been unavailable. So let's move on into the actual content. What are we talking about? We are talking about Tom King's The Vision. It's a series run, a limited series run that was released in 2015. It was written by Tom King, illustrated by Gabriel Hernandez Walta, colored by Jordie Bellaire, and the cover is by Mike. The covers are by Mike Del Mundo. It has 12 issues, and we're going to be talking about every single damn near one of them. We're going to start off with our history with the writer and his other works, and then we'll have pre-spoilers discussion and thoughts and opinions on this series. Then we'll jump into this in spoiler talk, the themes, our favorite moments, and some final thoughts. So it should be a pretty tight episode. So let's jump into it. We'll start with you, Chris. What is your history with the writer Tom King, and are you familiar with his other works?
I am. A couple months ago in 2020 on the podcast, during one of our weekly uploads, I talked about how I was reading the first arc of Tom King's Batman run. He was the follow-up writer and creator after Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo ended their run on the Batman. And in that conversation, I said that I believe I said that I enjoyed the arc. It was fun. It didn't hold up to my standards, or at least the bar that Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo had set previously, but I did enjoy reading it. Outside of that, I haven't read any other of Tom King's comics. He's a novelist, but I have heard excellent things about his Mr. Miracle run over at DC. So that's probably going to be the next Tom King book that I jump into.
For me, I love him in Grayson Volume 1, Agents of Spiral. I'm a big fan of Dick Grayson. He is one of my favorite characters, and I love when you see different story of said character, and then when he becomes agent, I think is Agent 57 or Agent 51 is what his code name is. And I love that run because it shows that when he's trying to change his type of persona of being Dick Grayson, but also is that the whole world finds out that he is Nightwing. He was the first Robin of Batman, but then he wanted to get like a different persona, and he was trying to infiltrate a organization. So you find all these type of characters in a different type of personality, and that's what I enjoy of Tom King, because he has done a lot of Batman runs. He also did the Rebirth as well, and that was very good. I paused around issue 15, but since then I have enjoyed I love his runs as well.
The Vision was actually the first thing I've read by Tom King, so I was really excited to start diving in. I know I had known him from his Batman run, even though I haven't read it. And after having read this, I actually picked up the first 2 issues of his run on Rorschach right now, which is
cool.
Pretty interesting. It's kind of there's this new Rorschach who's caught up in an attempted political assassination. He's potentially a former comics author who got famous and then became a recluse and may have some connection to the original Rorschach. It's pretty awesome stuff so far. So also, I had no idea Tom King, after interning at DC and Marvel, went and worked for the CIA after 9/11 for like 7 years before coming back and doing some of his, like pretty much the majority of his work here, which just brings such interesting context to his work.
Especially this Vision run, considering that they live in Arlington.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
James, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I started with Tom King's Batman Rebirth run. I really, really like that run. I'm a huge Batman fan, and I think he's such a good writer. And definitely the writing for me in that run was really, really good. That was the only thing that I read of his before getting into the Vision for this podcast. And now that Brian brought up this Rorschach run that he's working on, I definitely want to check that out, because I love Rorschach. I love that world around Rorschach. So I definitely want to see Tom King's Vision on Rorschach.
Very cool. I like Brian. This is my first Tom King superhero fiction that I've read. But I'll be talking about my thoughts more on this particular work, obviously, as we continue. The notable thing that I noticed from looking up his information on his Wikipedia, he self-identifies as half Jewish and half Midwestern.
Interesting.
Very interesting way to identify yourself. But yeah, reading about it, it's interesting that he lives in D.C. and the story is such a nuclear family story of living outside in the suburbs of D.C., an area that I've visited before. There wasn't enough content in this book about that main highway that runs to D.C. I forget what it's called. I think it's 61 or something. Anyway, it's
Highway 66.
Is it 66? Yeah, maybe. Anyway,
I believe so.
That is a.
They do mention. They do mention 66, Highway 66 in the book.
Yeah, it's a butthole road. It's the worst road in the United States for those who live in and around the D.C. area. It's the worst road in existence.
That's actually how Division starts. It's a butthole. Brilliant.
Well, that's technically true. So, that's a good segue for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if a synthezoid has a butthole. He would have no need for...
And if he did, should we send text messages to it?
Okay, perfect tie-in, yes.
Yeah, it's... I've heard of hemorrhoids, but androids?
No.
So before we get too lost in the weeds here, let's move on into our overall thoughts of this miniseries. James, let's start with you.
I thought this was amazing. Like this, I did not expect what I got in this story, in this miniseries. The first thing that really captivated me was the writing. I thought the writing was just so brilliant. It's some of the best writing that I've read in a while. You know what I mean? And I really, really like the art as well. And then just the mindset of Vision creating this family after everything that he went through with Wanda and that family that she was trying to build for them. Like, it just shows how human these synthezoids are. And that's something that I really, really liked. Like, Tom King was easily able to humanize these characters and you empathize with them. And as you see poor Viv, you know what I mean? Like, poor Viv and Virginia, watching her constantly glitching in and out, making all of these mistakes that humans would make. But because she's a synthezoid, she's this powerful being, there's so much more consequences to it. So I love that Tom King didn't shy away from any of that stuff. Again, man, the writing is really the main thing that absolutely blew me away about this miniseries.
Very cool. Yeah, and let me back up a bit. And for those who don't know what this story is about, essentially the Vision is trying to start a new family. I believe, is it Tony Stark helps him build like children and stuff? Or was he able to build them himself?
He builds them himself.
Okay, so he's built 2 children and a wife, and they attempt to live out a normal life, and the kids try to go to school, and while Vision is still doing his Avenger duties. And obviously, they're superhuman robots that can change their molecular structure and can cause a horrific amount of human and environmental damage. So things don't go well, and conflict ensues from there. So that's the basis of the story. So if you're familiar with WandaVision, it's similar and not so similar, and kind of I believe this is this a direct sequel to House of M, or is this?
I wouldn't call it a direct sequel, but it
because
definitely
something else comes after
elements.
House of M. Yeah.
Okay, so but this is very much a primarily
like a side story.
Yeah, like a side story.
Yeah. Tom King is definitely utilizing everything within Vision's comic book backstory to make this story stronger.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's move on into our thoughts with Brian. Brian, your overall non-spoiler opinions on the Vision.
Yeah, so it can't be understated how emotionally moving this story is. It is so heavy and profoundly human in a very interesting way, considering it's about a family of robots. So it just cuts to the core of what it means to have a family, to try and find your place in the world. And to your point about the writing, James, it contextualizes Shakespeare quotes within the context of our narrative beautifully. So just the fact that it can do something like this, express how art can be so true and so timeless, I think this kind of stands alone in that timelessness. The art, I have to say, the illustrated by Gabriel Hernandez Walta and colored by Jordie Bellaire, it's stark and just really adds to how bleak the overall story is. And there's some really haunting images from this comic. So yeah, I was pretty blown away by this one.
Very cool. Vash.
To add to what James and Brian just said, the writing is fantastic because I felt like I was hearing our boy Vision in my head, knowing with the narration of where the story was going. Like, he was telling us the story within the story, and it was beautiful writing because that's very hard to tell because you have to think of a third person but also first person of where you're going to tell the story, and that I find very hard to do, but Tom King does it in a fantastic way. And to find the personality of the characters of Virginia and Viv, to know what happens between them throughout those 12 issues is hard, and knows that they said themselves that there will be another day, there will be another tomorrow, but then in some chapters you don't know if there will be another tomorrow, and that type of lesson anybody could take to real life, and it's very beautiful because it's very fundamental.
Yeah, sure. Chris.
Yeah, I think all of you have spoken very well about this book. Tom King, I think, has created a masterpiece here, showing this human nuclear family and the struggles that you go through to achieve normalcy in your day-to-day life, but through the lens of synthezoids, these robots. It's absolutely brilliant.
Toasters.
They're right. We don't use.
They're
Come
a
on,
bunch
James.
of-
Let's be a little more PC here.
They're a bunch
on
of
the Pop-O-Holics
bunch of
podcast.
socket lovers.
Oh my god! But I think the benefit,
The
benefit that this story has going for it
In a
is that it's a
socket.
mini series, which allows Tom King to shape the narrative in a way where he gets to utilize every single element. There literally is not a piece of this story that doesn't have a callback or doesn't come back by the end. Even the most insignificant thing that you probably forgot about in issue 1 or 2 ends up having some importance or relevance in the latter half of the narrative. That's why I think this is possibly some of his best work. Even though Batman didn't really resonate with me as much as it did with James, I think what this had going for it that Batman didn't is that it's only 12 issues. So he really can craft this concise message right from the get-go because he knew that he wasn't going to get more than 12 issues. But I'm predicting that The Vision is going to go down in comic book history as possibly one of the best books of the decade and be held high with books like The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen over the course of the next 50 years. So this is a comic book masterpiece, in my opinion.
Facts, bro.
Yeah, on my copy of the miniseries, I have the collection. A comic book masterpiece, says the
Does it literally say that?
Says the New York Times.
Well, fuck me.
That's Chris Conkling with his super hot takes.
Well, at least thanks, New York Times.
I align with all of that, and it is quite a stark comparison. I just got done reading Spider-Man Life Story, and I'll say there was a lot to love about that, but I spoke about it on the weekly upload. There was a lot of stupid comic book shit and that happens in that story that really ruined the story for me in a lot of key ways that did not hit home throughout. And I know, James, I can see you. You're steaming. But that's for an audience, right? And it's not bad. There's a lot of people that love it. So clearly, my opinion on that is my own. But when you're dealing with the fantastical in such a big story with so many characters, I do think when you compare that to this miniseries, it is clear that the writing is just at such another level, as well as just the actual. Not to put Spider-Man, I'm not trying to crap on just that run, but in comparison to that, the amount of literary techniques that are used that are vast, ancient, and expertly managed. There's great foreshadowing and illusion and parallels, and subtext and just a lot of stuff that you don't see in a lot that I've seen in a ton of comics. And it's not necessarily just adult for the sake of being adult. I just think it's speaking in a very mature. There's adult things that happen that are obviously just over the top kind of graphic, but not excessively. And the actual maturity of it is in its pondering of dense philosophical questions about the purpose and meaning of life and souls and all that stuff. And there's some truly heartbreaking and beautiful stuff in this. To the art, I do enjoy the art front to back. So great job from Gabriel, Hernandez, Walta, and the coloring and stuff. I think that's all really solid. I think what gets the real prize is Mike Del Mundo.
Oh,
who's done the covers?
His covers, dude.
The covers
are so
covers
good.
are amazing.
There's not a bad one in the series, and they are in the top. I haven't read a lot of graphic novels and comic books, but I've seen a lot of covers, and covers are dope. And usually, it's like my favorite part of the art and expression in the medium. But these are among some of my favorite covers for a comic. I mean, they are just so dense, so rich, and just they were the points where I was, when you're reading a comic book and you just stop and you're just kind of like really enjoying and embellishing all the details. Every single cover had me just like looking at it and like wondering what it meant and just like infatuated with it.
There's the covers are vibrant and retro, but all of them have, or most of them have like horrific imagery involved.
Yeah,
so it's this juxtaposition with like these really bright and vibrant, friendly colors that draw your eye to them. But then when you like really focus in on what you're looking at, you're like, oh God, this is dark.
Which is your favorite cover, if I may ask?
Probably the one of him and Virginia kissing with the house on fire in the back. I mean, that pretty much sums up.
Issue 6. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of sums up a lot of what's happening in the story.
I love that they're like phasing through one another.
Oh,
on the
yeah.
cover.
Yeah.
Like they're embracing the only way synthezoids could possibly embrace, which is like entering each other. Basically, it's a cool cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to say that one's my favorite too.
For me, is issue 5 on when a boy Vision is going into the cop car.
Yeah, that's a great cover as well.
That is a strong type of symbolism for any type of era. So to me, that cover spoke volume, like about the son being mad, about father being, into the cop car. Like that speaks volumes and that speaks strength because it shows the expression of the son's face. It shows the anger and it shows the daughter just being sad, like, oh, they're taking daddy away. So I find that cover very strong as well.
There are also a lot of elements of racial strife in this book.
Yeah.
Race is context throughout. And if you look at that cover, one of the most interesting elements, kind of one of the most fucked up elements, I think, is that the officer is actually shoving Vision into the cop car, and Vision's having to phase through the car because the officer isn't paying attention to his head. So, had he been a normal person, he would have slammed his head on the door of the cop car.
Yep.
Luckily, Vision can phase. But it's such fucked up imagery.
Yeah, and lastly, to I did want to say, Vash, you are a native Spanish speaker. Mike Del Mundo's name means Mike of the World. Am I not mistaken?
Yes, you're correct.
I love it. It's great.
He had to try to find a little Spanish type of segue in.
Christian desperately wants you to start a Spanish
He's looking for your
podcast,
validation
Vash.
here.
Yeah.
I got it. I got the segue in.
Well,
I'm good for the rest of the show.
Historically, day, we see it with like Vincent van Gogh, that's day in French or whatever the language is. And then, in German and so many things where like, my name is dude from this place, or dudette from this place. And this dude's just from the world. He's like,
It's like Pitbull.
Yes.
It just be like that.
Anyway, lastly, on my opinion, non-spoiler, is that it deals with, to the point of dealing with really complex, weird, out there, fantastical stuff. This does a really good job of catching you up to speed if you don't know a lot about the history of the Vision. I think there's probably a lot you get out of knowing the history, but they introduce every character very logically in the way that it's written. It tells you everything you need to know to understand the story in context without dwelling on it or getting kind of bogged down in previous content. So from someone who is not super familiar with the history of the Vision and Wanda Maximoff and stuff, that was a definite plus for me and for new readers alike.
Yeah, it really impressed me watching Tom King like write out so much of Vision's journey throughout his time, you know what I mean? And then also going through, giving you just those little glimpses into, was it 37 villains?
37 times.
37 times he
yeah.
saved the world. Like just going through that sequence while he was being interviewed by the detective, man, that was brilliant writing.
And plus, it was nice. It was really nice to see the cameos of the other type of heroes. We saw Stark. We heard of Falcon and the other name drops of, hey, I got a present from Cap. Like those type of name drops, even though some of them weren't on screen all the time, but knowing those type of reference was very useful. And know like, oh, it's nice to know that they're all part of this world and they're still connected with Vision.
And they just call him the Captain, the Panther. I like how it's just the shorthand. Yep, the Witch.
Yeah.
But it tells you, you're mentioning the scene early on in the series. There's a series where they're kind of doing a walk through the house of the neighbors. I think it's in the first
issue 1.
Yeah, I think it's like the first scene. And every item they're discussing is part of the history of those characters. So you even learn, again, if you didn't even know who Captain America was or Black Panther, it like in those gifts, it tells you so much about those characters and their relationship with Vision and all. It's just very,
especially when they get to the one to Gore Everbloom.
Yes.
When they mention
Strong.
that, and then it says Virginia remains silent. There's such a heavy history between that item and who Virginia is, and we'll get into that in spoilers. But
the one
that was beautiful symbolism.
Yeah, absolutely. The one complaint I have, and this goes back to covers, the cover for the entire collection, I am not a big fan of. It is...
Dude, the family tree, it's so cool.
So the concept, so let me clarify. The concept is very strong. I just don't think it matches the art style that we get with the rest of it. But the concept is very good, and I don't absolutely hate it. But I would say if there's one cover I don't like, it's just the main cover of the book. To me, doesn't reflect the art style that you get throughout the series.
I do want to point out while we're talking about covers, Christian, if you have the opportunity to get the hardcover of the book, I highly recommend it because underneath the dust cover, it says "Family, the most precious memories," and it looks like a photo album of the Visions.
That's so cool.
That's great.
It's
That's
pretty
amazing.
This is like an unboxing video, Chris. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great audio podcasting. None of our listeners can actually see what we're showing each other, but damn, are we enjoying it?
Hey, man, that's the whole point of podcasting. Exclude your audience. Listeners, if you, we'll put a link in the show notes to some of the images we're discussing. So we're going to move on and jump into spoiler talk. I think it's pretty obvious we're all very, very hot on this series. And I can speak as I'm the resident bad comic book reader. But by the end, 5 years, once we're 5-10 years in the show, I'll be like an expert. So that'll be great because you'll force me to read all this stuff. I can give it the strong approval of like fresh. If you've never read a graphic novel, this is a really great one to start. The series is a great one to start with. Huge recommend. Sounds like everybody here is recommending it as well.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely for sure.
Yep. Very. I would say I'm usually a curmudgeon. There will be very spoiler alert for my thoughts and spoilers. I have very few complaints of this entire series or any large issues. So let's jump into that with spoilers. Yes, James, that's the new spoiler one. I was gonna just rip off your whole brand and make it the careful for spoiler alert, and just completely steal your entire
Trademark
brand identity.
So glad we didn't do that.
Or did we? Yeah, we were actually gonna commission a professional musician, but Chris had to butt in and say,
I'll be spending my money on a promising young woman first.
So
there it is. There it is. Once an episode.
Wow.
Never going away, loyal listeners. It's here to stay.
And I see that coming.
and I'm here for it.
Same here. I'm all here. If you have any more, then now I'm wondering, like, if me and James and Anthony, will they be keeping those and be playing while we're gone?
Tread carefully.
Yeah, it's you always got to be aware.
Always listening.
Evil laughter. Interesting.
I'm just gonna fill 3 minutes of our podcast with.
It was Christian all along.
Oh my God. We're not there yet. Oh my God. I can't wait to talk about that. But we're talking about The Vision and spoilers for The Vision. So let's start off with what are the themes of Vision? Brian, we're going to start with you. You're our resident fact guy. I know you've laid out in glorious detail all the Spark Notes hits. Give it to us straight. Give us the skinny.
No pressure here. No pressure.
We should have like a Brian's Cliff Notes corner or something in our main episodes.
Yeah, I should make another bumper. You know what, Chris?
I'll be spending my money on a promising young woman first.
You make your own bumpers. Those are you just spend time. Thematically, there's so much here. It's asking, what does it mean to be human? Or to try to be human. Does life have inherent meaning? And how does that tie into how humans exist within this system? Can we control our destinies? This is basically an existential crisis for the entire family, framed through a family drama. And it's also a horror story. So I think this really speaks to a lot of the anxieties that everyone goes through as they're trying to fit into society, trying to figure out how best to love the people around them and the ones they care about. And, you know, depending on your role, saving the world and how you can best serve that goal. I think the beautiful thing here is that Vision becomes more relatable, and the whole family does, through their imperfections. Their mistakes really show that they are learning to be what we would consider to be human. And in that is a lot of huge repercussions that cause a lot of damage, actually, especially like you had mentioned earlier, Chris, with the gravity of their powers. Their consequences are outsized compared to most. We have Virginia in a situation almost like Blade Runner, where she realizes her memories are not her own and is traumatized by this, and it inevitably destroys her, and she is able to sacrifice herself, which felt very much like Romeo and Juliet, melodramatic self-sacrifice for the family. And she was willing to take that on, knowing her history. Viv has a different problem where she is trapped in this past moment of loss that is her own, but that she can never have back because the one person who showed her kindness in her short life here was killed, and by her mother. So just the most tragic thing that can happen. Vin is so aware of his othering in that he's inherently on a basic level different than the people around him, and finding Shakespeare and getting ridiculously caught up in it, he's able to find something to live for, even knowing that he's fundamentally different. Ultimately, you can choose a path outside of your laid out destiny, but there's always a cost, and that's life. And it's huge, magnificent, and tragic. But those were kind of my major takeaways.
All right, and that's going to be the Pop-O-Holics podcast.
I was going to say, I think Ryan summed it up pretty well.
Yeah,
we can move on to the next section.
All right, that's the end of the show. Thank you for being here, just for 2 minutes and telling me about my name and where to find me. That's it.
James, since you definitely have a great follow-up to that.
Yeah, pretty much to echo everything Brian said. I mean, the themes of Tom King's The Vision is, what is the meaning of life? Like, what is family? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be normal? What does it mean to be a hero? What is it like dealing with trauma? Like, these are all human things being explored through these synthezoids. And one of my favorite moments in this, in the very beginning, was just Vision and Virginia's conversation about using the different terms of whether you say they seem nice or they seem kind.
Yeah.
I loved that exchange. That was when I was like, this writing is amazing. Like, this is next level writing. Like, this,
Dude,
it's so good the way it's done.
Tom King has done such an excellent job of creating this like synthezoid vernacular between all four of the Vision family. Like, they have a way of speaking to each other that is both robotic and human at the same time. Every element in the story, like, yes, they're talking to each other and it's very logic based, the way in which they're conversing with each other. But I dare anyone to not be able to find a moment in this book that you can't point to your own life and say, oh my God, I've had a conversation exactly like that with my spouse, or wow, I've had a conversation like that with my child as well. Like, it's computer speak, but so human at the same time.
Yeah, and I love that moment where Vision realizes what Virginia did, and then he does absolutely everything to protect his family first. Like, he's not some robot. He's not just some toaster. This is a being that actually feels great things for his family, and he's willing to do anything. He lied to the police to protect his family. You know what I mean? There's a scene, there's a panel with Vin in school, and this girl is like, are you normal? What does that mean? You know what I mean? There's also another panel where Vin goes to, I think it's his mom, or he goes to Viv, and he's like, if you cut me, do I bleed? Like, he's trying to figure out life, much like a teenager. You know what I mean? Like, it's so human. I keep saying that, but this story is just so human and so well written. And just, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of everything? You know, he's begging this question, and he wants us to ask those questions as well. And I absolutely love it.
Very well said. Chris.
I mean, James and Brian pretty much summed up exactly what I think about the book, which is that at its core, it's a story about humans and trauma and figuring out your way in the world. One thing I do want to push back at a little bit, though, something that Brian said. He mentioned, Brian, you mentioned that one of the themes of the book is like coming to terms with your destiny or fighting back against destiny. And I agree with you that that's definitely a conversation had within the context of the narrative, but I don't think our characters, at least all of them, are successful, even though it seems like they're successful when it comes to fighting their destinies. Like take Victor Mancha, for instance. His whole existence, he's been trying to fight back against becoming victorious, but in the end, he did something horrible to he murders his nephew and does something villainous. And even though he dies thanking fate for ensuring that he never became victorious, I would argue that he was already victorious by the time that he died, you know? So there are some characters that are incapable of avoiding that horrible fate. But that's one of the things that I really like about this book. In terms of trauma, I love how Vision's main goal in the book is to become normal. But the way in which he's choosing to do that is he's literally creating his past family. Like, Virginia, her brainwaves are taken directly from Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch. So she's like a shell of his first love. And then, of course, he makes twins to mirror his lost children that he had with Scarlet Witch. So he's like constantly chasing this normalcy that he possibly once had, but it's like an empty version of that life that he had with Wanda Maximoff. And I think that ties really well into the water vase of Zenla, which is like this item that was made. What purpose does it have? It's like an empty shell, just like all this synthezoid family. You know, you can't put flowers in it because of its poisonous aspects. So like, those are the type of things that I absolutely love about this book. And like I was mentioning earlier, Tom King wastes nothing. Like, it all ties in to everything that he's trying to say. And that's why this book is so deserving of like multiple read-throughs. I think you'll gain something new every time you read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Vash, your thoughts on the themes?
Well, for me, it's hard to speak of what my thoughts, because Chris and James already spoke about everything that I was going to bring up. So I'm going to try to repeat it, and hopefully very differently, and to add in a different take. Because I want to add to what James said about them having the first conversation in the first type of issue of they seem nice. I love this type of concept because and my fiance, we had this type of conversation like, oh, when we meet new people or when we go hang out with friends, oh, that was a good time. They seem nice, they seem interesting. We had a good time. But the way you say, the way you word stuff, and the way you express it is very different all the time. You don't say every single time the same, and you don't feel the same all the time. So the way Vision and the way Virginia spoke about it, ironically and ironically, we're both so fascinated because that's something that us humans like to talk about. For example, when we speak about science versus religion, what is it real? We don't know about it. And that conversation I find is so fascinating to know that Tom King brings this conversation like what James and Chris said, like, are we human or not human? Because they speak in a type of language that they are androids, some type of synthesoid, but they talk and speak the language of humans, but have the mindset of curiosity that want to know the knowledge of how do humans act and speak and go to school, just like Viv and just like Vin went to, because they also were questioning what is it, like, are we human, are we normal? And that type of concept, like every normal kid in high school acts, are we normal? Because they have their own faces of gothic, emo, metallic. They'll have their own faces of being popular and not popular in a day in and day out. So those kids that we have gone and we ourselves ask those type of questions ourselves as well, to know, like, are we human as well? Like, are we normal? Because some kids questions that as well, because that reason we get bullied and we get questioned for it because we don't seem normal to other people in that same population. And those type of conversations was brought up in this type of issue of Vision, because that's why these kids were bullied and were asked to leave the town because they were so different. They flew to class and they were not the same.
I do have to say, in regards to that, I think Viv might be the most well-adjusted out of the four of them by the end of the novel, solely because she has this whole speech when she's talking to Vision and when he's like sending her off to school at the end, where he says something about trying to be normal, and she basically maps out all the shit that she's gone through in her life, but she's like, I'm not normal, and then she flies off to school. So she's like completely accepting of who she is, the power she has, the experiences that she's had, and she just wants to be who she's going to be, which I really like. In the end, she's probably the most human out of all of them by the end of the book.
Are we human or are we dancer? Brandon Flowers, The Killers. You guys hit most of the stuff as we've discussed. I'd just like to point out how fatalistic this book is. It's almost a little much as far as thematically. It's pretty bleak and pretty like what's what am I looking for? It's like predestination for all the characters, because so much of, even in the first issue, and I love this too because what does have some light jokey context and is very much up to speed on what's happening in the first issue, and this is King using some foreshadowing, very blatant foreshadowing, but just taking this benign moment of them meeting the neighbors, and throughout the whole book, there's this narration that's happening, which I found very interesting, and I right off the bat, I didn't know if I would like that, but I think it plays really well for this story. But in it, the neighbors are in, and they're kind of talking behind the Vision's back, and they're kind of like, yeah, but can they hear us? And in the narration, it says, later near the end of our story, one of the Visions will set George and Nora's house on fire. Just like drops that, and you're just like, oh my God, like Tarantino level of like,
oh no,
just stop, stop the script and just let you know, like, things are going to be terrible. And so much of Vision and the other characters, Vision, being the main character in this, is dealing with the fact that he was originally programmed as Ultron to murder the Avengers, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, what does he do? He fulfills his destiny, right? And so much of our characters are grappling with, this is what I was designed to do, this is what I was trained to do, this is what I was lived for. And ultimately, they hit all those conclusions. And as much as it's their struggle to try to escape what they know their destiny to be, they ultimately succumb to it. And, the narration points that out for several characters, several events, and so does Vision struggle. So I find that's a little bleak, but I think, Chris, you pointed out really clearly that there is a little bit of hope with the Viv character kind of being able to see the forest for the trees and just be like, yeah, We just have to ride or die with this. And F is for family, Fast and Furious forever.
We're family.
Oh man,
we are Ohana. Nobody's left behind.
Except for Virginia. Meet Virginia. So that's a lot of what I was on top of what you guys have said as far as themes. What are some of our favorite moments from this run? What are some of our favorite issues? Let's start with you again, Brian.
Oh, sure. One of my favorite comedic moments, which there aren't that many like straight up funny moments, but Vision is on the phone with Virginia at some point, and he's kind of distracted. And he's just like, no, wife, I am listening. It is just that I'm also fighting Giganto. And it felt like something that is just
so
like,
matter of fact.
So matter of fact, it could be like,
like
I'm just in a meeting with my boss. Like such a believable husband and wife moment that just felt so hilarious to me given the context of it all. Someone brought up the "If you prick me, do I bleed," which is a kind of an interpolation of the Merchant of Venice line, which is incredible given the context when Vin says that.
Also, a nod to Zack Snyder and Batman v Superman.
Do you bleed?
Little steps below Shakespeare there, maybe, but probably the most impactful moment for me was when Viv and Vision pray together, and the order that they do it, the way that it's acknowledged later by the narration that robots don't have souls. I thought this encapsulates humanity so much that even if we don't know, even if sometimes our prayers aren't answered, part of being human is having that faith, and the breakdown that they give of faith earlier in the story, and kind of the inherent absurdity, scene. But beauty. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
It's such a beautiful. I mean, I interrupted to you, so I'm sorry. But it's such a beautiful scene, especially with Viv explaining to Vision that she's been doing this for a little while, and like you mentioned, the order in which she has to do it to make this intangible thing like faith seem logical to her synthesoid brain, and she maps it out like, I don't know if there's a God, so first I pray that there is a God, and then I don't know if synthesoids have souls, so then I pray that Vin had a soul, and then finally I pray that he can be at peace. So it really is logical in the way that she's breaking down the steps of her prayer. But you're right, this is such a human moment, trying to make sense of the illogical, you know? It's great.
Yeah, and the final moment, which was the other really big emotional moment for me, is when Vision, after Vin has died, looks back at a moment when he was on a call with him and wasn't paying attention. That one broke me. That was ridiculously tough, and I can just relate to it so much. You have those moments in your life that you just look back on, like, what was I thinking? I should have been present, and it's something that is just so relatable and so tragic.
Yeah.
And ultimately ends up being the thing that puts him over the edge in making that final decision to take on the Avengers and kill his brother Victor.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, who hasn't been there?
I hope not.
Who hasn't been there? You're a member of this superhero team. Your brother kills your son, and you have to face your friends to kill your brother.
You're trying to
it's a story as old as time.
You're trying to remember your dead robot son's memory, so you rip out your eye and you pop it down, and it plays a hologram of a moment where you were a bad father.
Is that not how you guys remember things?
Well, doesn't that sound like Black Mirror as well?
Yeah.
That's relevant, yeah.
Chris, what are some of your favorite moments?
I have a couple. One of my favorite moments is the conversation that Virginia has with Victor when she's practicing the piano next to him, and she's explaining that she can play the piano perfectly, but she cannot discern at what point she's actually playing the piano and at what point she becomes the piano, which kind of circles back to this question of like, what makes me human? Do I have a soul? Am I a person? Like, she's technically a machine, So she's basically a player piano when she's playing her piano, because that's exactly how they work. Player pianos are pre-programmed to play specific songs, as if as if they're playing themselves, right? So it really is a touching scene, and in a very genuine moment between her and Victor, where she's admitting to this thing that she's been struggling with. I also love the fact that by this point in the novel, she's stuttering constantly. Like something in her brain is misfiring, and it's just this excellent representation of stress and trauma that he's showing through these like synthezoid characteristics. I really dig that.
Yeah, and if your player piano ever questions its existence, run.
Chris, to your point about the repetition of words, I love how they ended up incorporating row, row, row your boat into that, because it's something where words are already repeated. That was just incredible writing there.
Yeah, that would confuse an AI that was processing like language. It was like, why are we row, row, row? Why row, row, row? Why? Why?
Why? It would just end up repeating every lyric.
Yeah.
And the other scenes that I want to bring attention to are the bookending scenes of this book. Like you mentioned earlier, Vash, the scene at the very beginning after they meet George and Nora, and they're having the conversation in the kitchen about kind versus nice. And Vision says, you want to use the term nice in this context. But then at the very end of the book, as Virginia's dying, having ingested part of the vase of Zenla, she says it was nice, and then Vision says no, it was kind. And I think it gives me goosebumps talking about it, because it's such an excellent callback. And I think the most fucked up thing though in the scene is that even as she's dying, she's like trying to get out the last words, which is like, why do you always have to correct me? Like her final thought is like, why do you always have to? And then unfortunately she passes, which is a tragic thing. But I really do love those two scenes. And then finally, there's a panel that I texted to Christian where Vision is confronting all of the Avengers for the first time, and you have this huge lineup of Avengers on the right side of the panel, Vision standing by himself on the left. But then, because Simon Williams, Wonder Man, is an actor, we have a huge billboard advertising Simon Williams' most recent movie, and it just shows that Vision cannot escape Wonder Man. Like, because his brainwaves are derived from Wonder Man, he's constantly in the background of his existence and is part of why he exists. So I think that's just beautiful imagery tying back into Vision's origins.
Yeah, kind of makes you wonder, man. I like too that the Avengers in that are like not heroically posed. It's like they're hanging out at like waiting for someone to go on like a concert.
Yeah, like,
oh shit, he's here.
There's like this discomfort, this like shuffling around, you know. They're not posed to take him on. They're just kind of like hanging out.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because it seems like in lesser hands it would have been this moment of like, you know, Civil War splash page. And it's not played for that.
Sure.
Also, they're here to stop one of their own. They're here to stop their friend. So how much do they really want to engage with Vision? Tony even tries to kind of reason with him at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it makes sense that they're not taking like an aggressive stance at the very beginning.
Yeah, I love I forget what it is exactly, but he's telling them, he's like, I do not want to hurt you, but I will essentially is what he's saying, but he says it in the most, Vision robotic way.
I think he says, I do not need your cooperation or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Are you looking for the panel, Christian?
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite panels was, I think it was in issue 4 or 5, was it, when Vision was trying to fix his daughter Viv, and then Tony said, hey, I should turn off the power. This does not look like it's going well. And then Vision tells him, like, if you stop it, you may be my friend, you may be my coworker, but I will kill you. I was like, oh, damn. And then Stark just looked at him like, okay, I will continue.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool.
It's so intense. And it shows you that Vision is like really buying into this father figure thing that he's trying to achieve. Like that is absolutely something a father would do for their child. Like
no matter what,
regardless of who's helping them Like
Right
it
on
is
forward,
all
yep.
about that parental relationship. Nothing else matters. It's excellent.
Yeah, the line is, I understand that I would greatly appreciate your cooperation in this matter. However, I do not require your cooperation in this matter.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh shit. No, one of my favorite panels, the one that
Biz
I
means
actually
business.
I kind of spoiled it a little bit for Brian. I'm so sorry, Brian. I thought you had read it. But it's after Vision
it's
blows Tony Stark away with his like mind beam or whatever it's called. Spider-Man in one panel just goes, ah, poop.
I think it's his one line, the whole book. It's perfect.
I was like, they even gave Spider-Man a
Single quip.
after like Tony Stark was murdered in front of his eyes. Ah, poop.
Well, that's his character. You know, he gotta make the quips. He gotta make the comedy. Because if you don't have Spider-Man and not make at least one joke to the bad guy, that ain't a Spider-Man right there. You know, that's not Peter.
Indeed.
Gotta keep it light.
Who have I not hit yet? James, some of your favorite moments.
Yeah, I have a few. When Vision takes Zeke's brain, the dog's brain, and creates Sparky for his family. It's so sweet, man, and such a human thing to do. It's like, well, what could cheer up my family? A dog. So I really, really love that moment.
Let me rip out this dog's brain and create a synthesoid dog. Yeah, and he's got the blood. I do want to mention, he's got the blood coming down his face, and it looks like a tear on his face. It's very disturbing.
So creepy.
Yeah, very. I also love the panels of Agatha talking to the Avengers about her premonition about Vision and everything, watching all of the Avengers there. You got Miles Morales, Peter Parker, She-Hulk. It's just filled with all of these amazing heroes. I love watching that panel.
It's also a great reveal that she's the one who's been narrating these first 6 issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a great reveal. I love that part of it. Victor infiltrating the family, right? When you realize that he was actually sent there by the Avengers to investigate what happened to the kid, what happened to the Grim Reaper, and all of these different things. Like, that hit me because I did not see it coming, you know? So when I saw the reveal, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then as tragic as it is, what he does to Vin is just like, man, it's almost like I saw Ultron in his eyes for like 2 seconds, but it wasn't intentional. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't want to hurt his nephew. Another thing that I really loved was I think it was all of issue 7, which was the Wanda and Vision backstory. That is my favorite issue out of all of them. I absolutely loved it. I love how it begins with him and Wanda talking about this terrible joke about toasters, and then ends with Vision and Virginia in the bed in the exact same way with the same joke. Like, I loved the writing in that issue. I thought that entire exchange was great.
James, can I chime in here for just a moment
of
about
course.
that joke? So the first time I read that joke, I was absolutely flabbergasted because when my wife and I were first dating, one of the jokes I used to tell her when she would ask me I would always tell her the same joke. And one of the jokes that I would tell her was a variation of that joke. Instead of toasters, it was muffins in an oven instead of toasters sitting on a counter. And like, when I saw him say that joke, my mind just like exploded. I was like, I cannot believe that he is telling this joke right now.
That's
it was so weird.
And plus, James, I really want to add, because I love how we have known each other for so long, how we think alike as well. Because I was gonna say this as one of my favorite moments in comedy, of how Vision brings this joke up with Wanda, and it's how they kind of connected and how they're brought up about a freaking, like, a toaster. He's just like, it was his joke. But then I love how Tom King brought it back at the end of the issue, full circle, and it has more like it was a joke. But that joke had a meaning within the joke, and that's what it made it more impactful and more beautiful. And it was more centered around it, like, of how it was more about Vision, more about the Wanda, about him understanding the joke, about the humor aspect.
It's also this tragic moment where like Vision's realizing that Virginia is never going to be Wanda Maximoff despite having her brainwaves. She's never going to react the same way that Wanda used to react to him. It really is heartbreaking. Last thing I want to say about this issue, I'm so sorry I interrupted you, James.
No, you're good.
This was also like my favorite issue out of the whole run.
Same.
We didn't mention this cover when we were talking about covers, but the cover is Vision being engulfed by Wanda's like red magic, and there are like multiple Wandas reaching around him. Again, illustrating that like Wanda Maximoff is a woman and a relationship and a love that he's going to carry with him his entire life. And even after being apart from her, he's never going to be able to escape her. And no woman, not even Virginia, is going to be able to live up to what she was for him.
I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine the sex with a witch?
Well,
it's got to be pretty next level.
Well, that was his
Hex
first
level.
love. Is to add to what Chris was saying, is like that was his first love. Like no matter what, some people cannot escape that. No matter if you are out of that first love, no matter if you're out of that relationship, no matter if you move on, there are times and moments in your new relationship you remember about your first love because that was the one that you was in depth and that the one that you really connected with, your jokes you grew with, and you made your connections and your memories with, and that was what Vision was engulfed around Wanda in that cover, and that's what Chris spoke about. It's like Vision cannot escape from her, even at the end about the issue. He felt like even when he met her, she still brought up the joke about the toaster, and he wanted to laugh, but he couldn't bring himself to it because that's not his girl no more. That is somebody else's. And then she mentioned it. Oh, I'm having a good time with him. He's just like you, but not like you. That hurts to anybody, no matter what you say it to. It hurts that when you break up with somebody, say that, oh, it's not you, it's me. I'm like, it's still is me at the end of the day because you broke up with me. Like I did something wrong in the relationship. And seeing that words, it hurts anybody because anybody have broken up with somebody or you've been broken up with, and that just hurts.
Yeah, especially when you're
James,
thinking about that hot Scarlet Witch sex too.
Please continue with your favorite moments.
You're good. I got two more. Victor just trying to do anything to not be the thing that his father created, right? Him looking up to Vision to be this shining light of what a hero is supposed to be, even though Vision is also quite flawed, as we've seen in this story. But Victor just trying to do absolutely anything. And then when he gets this opportunity, he's called by the Avengers to do something that will help people. You can tell how happy that made him, and that made me happy because to me, that for him, that was another step away from Ultron, and I absolutely love that. The last one that I'll talk about that absolutely broke my heart was in, I believe it was in issue 10 or 11, where Vision is playing back the footage of Vin talking about Shakespeare and talking about these different lines, and Vision is like, I am sorry, I could not listen. As I noted, I am on a call. And it's just so soul-crushing because he wasn't paying attention to his son in that moment when his son was so passionate about this Shakespeare that he feels so passionate about. And then that's what really triggers him to just go out to have to kill Victor at this point because he feels like he wasn't there to save his son. And also he plays back this moment that shows that in some moments he wasn't even paying attention to his son at all. So he felt like he should have been a better father, and to atone for that, he needed to go take care of business and kill Victor. So I absolutely love that. This entire miniseries is filled with amazing moments, but I chose these for the emotional beats. Like it just hits so hard.
One of my favorite ones that I did speak with Chris and James, but to add to it, in issue 4, Virginia went to the house to the person that had the recording when she hit the body. But something that most people could relate is that when you don't want to shoot the blame to yourself, you shoot the blame to somebody else, and that's what the father did. The father shot a bullet to Virginia to think that he will kill her, but he forgot that she's a synthezoid and she could phase. and not knowing that the son was behind her, and not knowing that he just killed his son mistakenly, like totally accidental, not on purpose, and shot him. And his line was saying, oh no, you killed my boy, you killed my boy, which Virginia never did. It was his fault. But he's shooting the blame because he was in a spur of the moment. He was just having a conversation with Virginia, but the conversation was more saying, hey, you have to leave this town because you're causing problems for my son in high school, and your son almost killed my boy just because he wanted to find out where was your daughter because that was his lab partner. But your son wanted to choke him because of his choice words. But he was blackmailing her and framing her. So Virginia just wanted to have a conversation, and she wasn't gonna do anything at the moment until he put a gun out, and that gun was putting out violence, and that's when she saw that humans will always be it.
I want to apologize to our loyal listeners because we've neglected to mention this in the spoiler section, but to give context to what Vash is talking about, the inciting incident in this book in issue 1 is the villain, the Grim Reaper, breaks into the Vision family home when Vision is out doing Avenger things and stabs Viv through the abdomen, at which point Virginia retaliates and beats the Grim Reaper to death with a cookie tray and then buries his body in the backyard. And then from there, as Vash mentioned, one of their neighbors sees this and records her burying the Grim Reaper in the backyard and then blackmails her for it. We probably should have mentioned that way earlier on.
That was borrowed.
What'd you say?
Yeah,
the cookie tray.
Nora and George. Yeah, that was borrowed from Nora and George because they left the cookies for them.
Yeah,
but they used it as a weapon. A very strong weapon for sure, just to have that one swing and kill the Green Bird. That one swing was very strong.
Oh no, she beat him down mercilessly
a few times.
I do love that. I don't love, but it's ridiculous that she cleaned the blood off the tray and then did give it back to George in like it's
super
totally
bent,
mangled
fully
state.
sanitized.
Yeah, like nothing happened.
And she's getting rid of evidence as well.
Yeah, here's the murder weapon.
You take it.
Yep.
I don't want it no more in my house because in case my husband uses micro ice and find anything bloodstain and articulate, she used a lot of Clorox to clean that bloodstain.
And to Vash's point about humans taking responsibility, instead of Virginia telling Vision what she did and going the logical way about it and handling it as a family, she chose to lie about the entire situation and try to hide it from everyone, not taking on that responsibility of her actions. So I love that you brought that up, Vash.
Thank you, because she took the human side as well to lie, and that's what most humans do. When they make a mistake, instead of telling the truth first, they lie about it first until the truth needs to come out much later on. And that shows a lot of human rights.
Don't tell your father. I
want to point out, too, that after that is the cover of 3, which is another favorite cover of mine, which is Virginia sweeping up the blood from the Grim Reaper with his weapon, with his like sickle. Or scythe rather. Yeah. And it parallels like a woman cleaning the house with like a dustpan.
Yes.
It's very, very, very creepy. In the family photos in the background, she's in like a short like 50s style dress.
And plus, it adds to shows that most people like to sweep the problems under the rug as well, and that's what she's doing.
Exactly,
showing that I'm just hide this dead body here, like no problem, like nothing's going on here with, and nobody's gonna find there's problems under the carpet.
Yeah, it's like a rug, but it also looks like it could be grass. Obviously, that's not something that actually happened, but yeah, I agree.
Yep,
correct. Brian, were you gonna say?
Well, I just wanted to say the choking scene that was the root cause of the interaction you were talking about, Vash, was maybe the scariest moment for me. Them leading up, him talking about his conversation with his sister about humans kind of having an off button as well. I was just like squirming reading it, and I thought he had killed him. Until it was revealed that he didn't die.
He turns gray.
When
you look at the panels, he's turning gray. He's turning
It's
super
insinuated that he's dead.
I thought he died too. I'm like, he did it. Nobody's gonna ask for cops or nothing. Like nobody's going for ambulance. But next chapter, he's alive. Oh, cool.
Also, the conversation that Virginia and Vision have with the principal, as the principal is trying to expel Vin.
Yes.
Just Vision kind of lording over the principal this fact that he's an Avenger and that he's saved the world 37 times, and the narration says that this is something a conversation the principal's going to think about over and over again for the rest of his life. And that's just so chilling that like this actual human, despite coming across as rather racist and unlikable, it really does show the dichotomy between, the Visions trying to become human and how this actual human is reacting in that situation. It's scary because they're not human. They're definitely not human. They're almost gods.
And plus, to add more to that, is where he said that if a children from school brings a gun, they are suspended.
Right.
But your children are a walking gun, just in a different shape. And Vision and Virginia felt offended by that. It's like, what do you think they're gonna do? Like, are you gonna expel my kids just because they did a small mistake and everything like that? Like, no, sir. Your kids did not do a small mistake. They choke a kid, and you are like a walking gun. Beautiful symbolism for that.
Yeah. I love that he mutters to himself, shaped fucking metal, as they're walking out of the room, as he's like pouring himself a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Vision mutters to himself. He's like, Wanda used to choke me, and I quite enjoyed it.
Wife. So I just want to say, it kind of giving my final thoughts and one last scene, because this whole story is it's a very human story. Vision starts off having faith in humanity and faith in the world, and this is kind of progressively him losing that faith. And I think the perfect symbol around it is Cap's lighter that he not only uses to break out when he's trapped, but inevitably just says, so you see, it is just metal that has lasted. There is no wonder to it. And he has just completely lost what has previously been driving him and keeping him saving the world over and over for these people who are always going to think of him as another on some level.
Yeah,
and,
largely unappreciative.
Yeah, it's just tragic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap it up. We're going to thank Vash and James for being on from C4S Villains and Anime Lately. Where can people find more of your work on the internet, fellas?
You can find me on Twitter, IG, which I don't use a lot, but if you want to find me there, thank you for following me there at Legendy Vash. And for YouTube, podcast is Anime Lately on everywhere: Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, podcast, and it's glad appreciated. We do content every Sunday for sure, every Thursday night's podcast. Anime reactions, it depends on our schedules, but if it drops, please watch them, comment them, like them, subscribe to them, because we want to be up to 10K subscribers. And definitely thank you for C4S Villains, because it's glad I appreciate all you guys' support. Me and James appreciate doing the show every week, and you guys' support really means a lot to us. Thank you very much.
Well, you're about to get that Pop-O-Holics bump. That fat Pop-O-Holics bump, James.
And we appreciate it. I can't wait to have all three of you guys on Villains to talk the Snyder Cut. That's going to be so much fun. Thank you guys for inviting us. This was a great story to read. It was great to talk to you guys about this story. You guys can find absolutely everything that I do on carefulforspoilers.com. You'll find links to all of our social media there, all of the different podcasts, and check us out every single Friday. We are live at 8 p.m. CST, 9 EST for C4S Villains, where we're going to be talking WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Invincible, The Flash when it comes back, all of these different shows in the world of Marvel, DC, Star Wars, comics, whatever. You'll find it all on C4S Villains, and we'll see you there.
Very cool. Yeah, check all that stuff out. We're excited to be on this super Snyder Cut Pop-O-Holics C4S super mega cut pop. I'm sure that's going to be an 8-hour
Will it be as long as the actual movie?
It might be.
That depends on the night.
It'll be like the Endgame episode.
You can follow us on all the social media at Pop-O-Holics. We have all those links in the show notes. Please email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com. Rate us 5 stars and Apple Podcast. I am at Christian Katie. Brian is at True Pop-O-Holic. Chris is at Chris Conklin. Follow us on our independent social media medias there. Chris, what are we going to be talking about next week?
Christian, next week, we're going to be starting our Reality Distortion Month, where we are tying everything we're watching into WandaVision. And next week, we're going to be talking about The Truman Show, which is an excellent Jim Carrey movie from the 90s.
Almost made my top 5 movies of all time. Very excited.
It's a great
No
movie.
problem rewatching that. Excited to put that on and catch up with that. That's going to be a fun conversation. So all that and more, check us out on our weekly uploads. And we'll see y'all next week on...